All righty. Welcome back. Welcome back to Panel 1, Mars Revisited Symposium. Okay, we're at a critical mass. And as you know, we have a tight schedule, and the Virgo in me is going to keep this thing rolling. So come on in. And so yeah, as I said before the break, we're going to be doing the panelists with everyone doing 15-minute presentations in a row, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So we will begin with the beautiful Marissa Del Toro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marisa Del Toro. I am so grateful and honored to be here today. Thank you, Christian, Matthew, the museum, Olga, for supporting Mars and the history that needs to be shared. So I'm so excited, and thank you for my fellow panelists. I'm excited to hear you guys speak today and everyone else as well. Shout out to my parents in the audience as well. The Del Toros are here, so we're representing. So let me just click slides. Okay, great. So I am a curator, art historian. I'm also assistant director of Next Haven, an arts organization based in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm originally from Riverside, California, and I'm happy to share that I used to live here in Phoenix. I'm happy to be back again. So thank you all. Today, it is gonna be a crash course of Chicanx art history, so bear with me. I got 15 minutes. I know my friend, the Virgo, is gonna keep me to time, so I will be moving. So if there's any questions, please hit me up later. I'm also gonna make sure that these slides and a zine version of this presentation will be available on my social media and my website. So the topics we are gonna talk about today is what is Chican AOX art? And I'm gonna first define Chicano. And just to quote Los Angeles Times journalist Ruben Salazar, Chicano is a Mexican American with a non-Anglo image of himself. So that is gonna start us off. And Chicano is a reclaimed term during the 1960s as a sign of self-determination and cultural reclamation. Today I'm gonna be using Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, and just for those who don't know what the X is, the X signifies gender neutral. It is for people of Mexican descent who exist outside of the boundaries of gender, but also in all the fluidity of what gender is. It is an umbrella term, so that's how I'll be using it through my presentation. I'll also be talking about the categorical impossibility of Chicanx art, the aesthetics and iconologies, and at the very end, getting to institutions and future, the reception and representation of Chicanx art within museums and scholarship. So, to start us off, we need to look at the time, the history of where our people are from. Chican AOX time, it begins before this, but 1848, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It officially ended the Mexican-American War. It resulted in the ceding of 55% of Mexico's territory to the US, specifically the lands now known as California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and part of Wyoming. This granted also Mexicans living in those lands with the option to become US citizens and to continue residing there. However, this treaty was not fully enforced or kept. It was the birth of the Mexican American. We must acknowledge that the border crossed us, Chicanx people. This is our ancestral land from which we exist in and continue to move back and forth, and we will continue to move back and forth despite what our government says. I'm gonna be moving through these timelines really quickly, so again, bear with me. 1942, Bracero Program. It allowed workers from Mexico to come to the US temporarily, work in the fields and labor. 1947, Mendez versus Westminster. Mexican-American community in Orange County, California, successfully sued to end public school segregation. 1962, United Farm Workers. The Farm Worker Labor Union, founded by Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and Gilbert Padilla, as well as the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, AWOC, led by Larry It Lee Ong, was formed. 1968, walkouts occurred in California and Texas. Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. 1969, El Plan Espiritual de Aztlán was created. 1970, the Chicano moratorium against the Vietnam War took place. National Mexican Women's Commission was formed. 1975, Voting Rights Act of 1965 is extended to Hispanic Americans. I want to just highlight that again, that in 1975 is when Hispanic Americans were allowed to properly vote within this country. So this is the Chicaneo art timeline. Again, there is more to be added to this, but I can only fit so much on one slide. So to highlight some of the key moments, 1959, earliest Chicano exhibition held by the Mexican American Political Association. And this is just to remind you all and to acknowledge that Mexican Americans were always creating and making art. It did not just begin in the 1960s, it occurred before then as well. 1965, Luis Valdez founded El Teatro Campesino. It became an extension of the United Farm Workers, UFW, as an organizing form. Artists like Carlos Amoraz painted backgrounds and sets, and they would move throughout the cities of California, the Southwest, to highlight their mission to speak about labor boycott issues occurring at that time. 1969, Arte del Barrio Traveling Survey Exhibition. This was the first time recorded that I could find. Chicanx artists were self-organizing exhibitions across the world and across the US and traveling them. That is significant to acknowledge that we were also organizing and sharing our art. 1980, this was another traveling exhibition. It originated in 1976, but Veñas de la Mujer exhibition. It's a significant traveling exhibition co-curated by Judy Baca and others that celebrated and highlighted Chicana and women themes. It's just another significant moment to acknowledge that Chicana art was very prevalent during this period, even before then. 1998, Alicia Gaspar de Alba's book, Chicano Art, Inside, Outside the Master's House, was looking at art exhibitions of Chicano art, the reception, the presentation, and critically, but also celebrating how they construed Chicanx identity, culture, and representation. 2008, Phantom Sightings, Art After the Chicano Movement, another traveling exhibition that originated in LA and then came here to Phoenix as well as other institutions. This is another significant Chicano art exhibition to be had within this country. So now I move to look at the styles and aesthetics of a few Chicana artists. Malaquillas Montoya. These are prints. The one on your left, Yo Soy Chicano, 1972. The one on the right, Vietnam Aztlán, 1973. These are typical of the styling of this period in the 1960s and 70s. Print was prevalently used within this time frame as it was an easy and low-cost method of sharing poignant political messages to the masses, to the people. So print, calendar, any form, zine, magazines were shared and passed out. But also, this is also a time when Chicanx artists, Chicana artists were defining their voice as a visual artist, defining their style, their theme, critically debating each other as well. And I want to quote Malaquillas. Quote, "It is with this voice that I attempt to communicate, reach out and touch others, especially to that silent and often ignored populace of Chicano, Mexican, and Central American working class, along with other disenfranchised people of the world. This form, this art form, allows me to awaken consciousness, to reveal reality, and to actively work to transform it. What better function for art at this time? A voice for the voiceless. And I share that to highlight artists such as Malaquias. Perspective for his art was to be a voice for the voiceless. Now, this was not universally shared amongst all artists. Mel Casas, this is his Humanscapes, number 63, dates roughly 1967 to 1977. Chicano artists were also exploring art for art's sake. They wanted to be independent of any strict political, cultural significance. This work, Mel Casas, a San Antonio-based artist, highlights his interest in cinema, screens. He was very at the cutting edge of being critical of technology and looking at and thinking about how media influenced the masses. Here we have Show of Hands that displays symbols of unity through the visualization of different skin tones. We have the fist showing pride, symbols of sign language displayed. We have Michelangelo's Hand of God in the center. We have the middle finger, flipping up at European standards perhaps. But then we also have the UFW flag, again, highlighting a show of hands. Yolanda Lopez. This is 1978 Guadalupe series. On the left is her grandmother holding a knife in skin nape. In the middle is her mother sewing the Virgin of Guadalupe's blue mantle with stars, a symbol of hope. And on the last section, Yolanda herself, a self-portrait. She's wearing the blue mantle that her mother sewed while holding the dead snake and running. For Yolanda, running was a significant pose as it signified personal growth. When she went to UC San Diego, she began to run while attending grad school, first in her family and the only person of color in her program. Running was also a significant movement in the 1960s and 70s. Women in the US were not officially allowed to participate in running marathons until 60s and 70s when they pushed their way in. This series was originally intended as a critique of the Virgin of Guadalupe iconography that was considered pious, modest, and caring. However, instead, it became a strong symbol of Chicana feminism. It centered working class women as strong, independent women. Okay, so now we get to the categorical impossibility. And that phrasing comes from Harry Gamboa, who once wrote that Chicano art is a categorical impossibility, meaning it cannot be easily categorized into a singular homogeneous descriptor. Also, just shout out to the archives that hold Chicanx history, the Museum of Fine Art Boston, the Institute Center, International Center for the Arts of the Americas is where I get a lot of my information from. So just wanted to highlight that. Citations are important. So I chose 3 texts written by Chicanx artists that produced new knowledge and also debate each other. First, we have Malaquias Montoya and Leslie Salkowitz Montoya. A critical perspective on the state of Chicano art from 1980. It was in the Metamorphosis publication, again, that was self-organized. In this publication, their essay, they dismiss the trend of Chicano artists moving away from a community focused to individual artistic pursuits. They cautioned against participation in mainstream art market due to the political and economic systems that these art markets worked from, and they oppressed third world countries. They also called for Chicano artists to reaffirm the original goals and values of the Chicano movement, which is community and social change. Tomás Ibarra Frausto, his Rascuachismo, A Sensibility from 1989. It is the conceptualization of a Chicano artistic sensibility. Tomás is pivotal within Chicanx history and art history. He defined what our aesthetic could be, is, and will be in the future. He defined it by placing it from an underdog perspective, a working class perspective. He saw it as a form of resistance. Strategies with appropriation, reversal, and inversion were used, and can only be described as emblematic of a specific attitude and taste that not many can replicate outside of being Chicanx. Schiffer Goldman, response, Another Opinion, 1980-1981, and this is in direct response to Malaquias Montoya and Leslie Salkowitz Montoya's essay from Metamorphosis as well. In this article, Schifra, another pivotal art historian of Chicanx history, she defends Chicano artists' ability to retain oppositional perspective while experimenting with a range of styles and techniques from dominant culture of mainstream art movements. She asserts that Chicano artists have the right and need to participate in the mainstream art market and major institutions. She challenges notions of Chicano art only being displayed in alternative spaces. She recognizes their importance, but she also recognizes the need for us to integrate and highlight our culture in the dominant. Schiffer's article highlighted a question that came up to me of what is a Chicano vision and worldview composed of. She attempted to answer this question by defining Chicano art as, quote, the present-day Chicano is heir not only to Mexican political cultural lore, but also that of a 150-year history of resistance to Anglo domination, racism, and economic exploitation that has left its imprint on culture. To seek and know these histories, to understand their twin impress on personality, thought, manner of life, customs, and political struggle has been the content of Chicano art. She asserts that Chicano art is always in a constant process of formation, evaluation, reformation, multiplicity, and heterogeneity. With that in mind, I attempt to answer of what is a Chicano vision and worldview composed of by highlighting a few Chicanx artists. Here we have Rupert Garcia, Assassination of Striking Mexican Worker, 1979, highlighting the political reality of their existence. Here we have Patsy Valdez and Ms. Vaginal Davis, highlighting performance, queer, and fabulosity. Patsy took photo of Ciclona, a performance artist also based in LA and part of OSCO history, and then hand painted this photograph to highlight the beauty of their work, their performance. Ms. Vaginal Davis, here in a cover shot for Cholita, a made-up band, well, actually a real band that they formed with friends that captured punk aesthetic and queerness. Okay, there's a few slides missing, but that's okay. I also wanted to highlight Irena de Cervantes. Her portrait of herself, the triptych of Nepantla, is a spiritual self-portrait that looks at Nepantla, and this is also what Chicanx art and Chicano vision encompasses. It shows the in-betweenness of cultural identity. Here we have Gabriela Munoz and Gabriela Ruiz. These images highlight how body is served, performed, and critically analyzing feminist perspectives that critiques against bodily restrictions and suppressive moral values, but also expressing the female body. So now I move to institutions and future of what Chicanx art can be. I wanted to highlight some recent exhibitions, installations at mainstream museums. Here we have Mario Ayala, Rafa Esparza, and Guadalupe Rosales at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art in 2023. In order for our survival and our memory to continue, it is important that we recognize that Chicanx art is American art and that it is and needs to be within these institutions. There's Irena. Okay, so this is Napantla. I also wanted to highlight an installation view that I was able to co-curate with Gilbert Vicario and Cecilia Fajardo Hill, Chican AOX Body at the Perez Art Museum. This first premiered at the Cheech Museum in Riverside, California in 2023. This exhibition, we focused on the experimental, conceptual, and performative nature of Chicanx art, pushing the boundaries of what Chicanx art has been understood to be from the mainstream and adding more scholarship. And the most recent installation, View of Shifting Landscapes at the Whitney Museum of American Art from 2024 to 2026. And this is a display of their collection, which includes several significant Chicanx artists, some Patrick Martinez, Leslie Martinez, Amalia Mesa Baines, and Luis Jimenez. I wanted to highlight this because also it is important that we are collected by institutions for our memory to continue on forward. Before I end my conversation today, I also want to highlight the scholarship it took to get here that informs my work and others. This list is not exhaustive. There are so many more that cannot fit on the slide. But I also wanted to highlight there's a further reading section, and I hope you guys take the time to look at that and continue this scholarship yourself. Before I end, I want to say thank you, but also I want to highlight and finish with ASCO Instant Mural. In an interview, Patsy Valdez and Humberto Sandoval, in what they described as a hit-and-run tactic, sort of guerrilla style, they duct taped themselves against walls along the streets of LA, took a photo, and they took off in their car down the street. This was a statement. It was fleeting, but significant. They didn't leave any residue. They didn't leave any marks on the wall. But for Patsy, it was about the restrictions she felt as a woman in her community and society. They addressed programmatic erasure of Chicano culture in mainstream media and also mainstream art world. Chicano arts is a reality. It happened. They also highlighted the oppression and restrictive limits affecting people on a daily basis in their community. So I ask you to contemplate the complexities of Chicanx art within the wider paradigms of contemporary American art. And I end my conversation there. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Wow. I'm going to try to follow that up and get set up, so give me about 30 seconds. Hi, everyone. Buenos dias. My name is Angelica Becerra. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently the Bradford and Christine Mishler Associate Curator of American Art at the Huntington Library, Art Museum and Botanical Gardens in Los Angeles, my hometown. But today I'm going to say that the artist is more present than the curator. As an artist and curator, oftentimes I don't get the opportunity to have the artist step in the front. And if that's okay with you, I think the artist is more here than the curator. I want to first thank Christian and Matthew, who have already heard it a lot of times today, but I'm just really grateful that you organized a symposium and created an opportunity for all of us to be here. I know a lot of work went into today, and I just want to say thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Again, my remarks today deal with highlighting the importance of the collaborative process between printers and artists, and how Mars recognized this with their Artist in Residence program. My goal today really is to underscore how the act of working with print and creating opportunities for artists to connect with each other in and outside of the print workshop is part of the incredible legacy that Mars has built as a printmaker. I just wanted to highlight the printers are, the backbone of a lot of the work that you saw in Marissa's presentation, for example. Chicano artists, especially those who produce print, rarely work alone. And it is that act of problem solving and learning that I want to talk about today. I also want to acknowledge that I will be putting a spotlight on the labor of printers who notoriously would like to remain behind the scenes. So my apologies for blowing up your spot. As a past participant of the professional printmaking atelier at Self Help Graphics in my hometown of Los Angeles, I know firsthand the importance of having a skilled master printer at your side. My deepest gratitude to Duit Tafoya, who guided me through my own first printmaking experience. He's the maestro, even though he hates the word master printer. And really, without him, I would not know what to do in the studio. So I always name him along with, whenever my print comes up, for example. I also wanted to highlight the man on the screen that you have here. This is Joe Segura. And I was telling Christian when I was invited to speak today that I first came to know about Mars by this unexpected side road called Joe Segura. He was born in Sterling, Illinois, and is a grandchild of migrant workers from Mexico. And Segura is a dedicated collaborative artist and educator, and also one of the most established master printers working in the country today. I came across Joe and his work as a printer in the first few months of my fellowship in modern and contemporary prints and drawings at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And going off script, I was just trying to find us. I was just really homesick, and I wanted to find Chicano or Spanish surnames in the collection. And when Segura came up, I was sort of thinking, this is something here. Let me go dig deeper, and I'm so glad that I did. I came across his name in the catalog for New Mexico-based Tamarind Workshop, and once you kind of see Joe's name, he's everywhere. These are screenshots from multiple museum collections where he's named as the publisher and the printer. And Tamarind, if you're not familiar, was established in the 60s and revived the medium of lithography printing in the US. It's an important printing space. And many of the now customary practices for printmaking began at Tamarind. For example, the chop, having a printer create an embossed seal on the bottom of the print came from Tamarind. So when you think about that legacy, Segura was accepted into this prestigious master printer program. He was an apprentice printer for a couple years, which is their process. And then he graduated with his master printer certification in 1984. So today, less than a couple hundred individuals can call themselves master printers in the medium of lithography via this program. So it's a very important group of individuals. And I really cannot underscore enough the dedication, skill required to attain this designation, and the technical and interpersonal labor needed for collaborative lithography. While working on this certification, Segura learned about the value of the collaborative process between printer and artist, and he went on to found what would become the Segura Publishing Company in '81 in Tempe, Arizona. This studio played an important part in contemporary printmaking with an initial focus on collaboration with artist printmakers and on the print process for more than 3 decades here in Arizona. Segura was drawn to working with underrepresented artists and provided them with access to the medium, and a way to share their ideas with a wider audience was central to the mission of the studio. Some types of printmaking require a lot of equipment and are not readily available to working class artists. And so Joe knew this, and lithography is one of those mediums that you need a lot of equipment. I see some nodding happening in the audience. If you've ever done a lithography, you know. So from 1979 to 95, Segura was the studio manager for the print research facility at Arizona State, and he would later become part of the faculty there until 2010. He was invited by the University of Notre Dame to relocate his studio to South Bend, Indiana, where he is today and continues to work as a printer and an artist. While not always the case, many printers have their own independent art practice. They're also artists. And as artists, they understand the importance of working through an idea or a concept until it becomes tangible and real. In his abstract landscapes and contemplative drawings of flora and fauna, Segura works through the very processes that he's helped many artists overcome inside the studio. And also a little Easter egg is that when I look at printers who happen to make art as well, you see that they're very experimental in medium. Here you have a photorelief and multi-block lino cut, which a multi-block lino cut, to me, having a printing background, reads as that's a lot of work. Very complicated. And so while that may be intimidating to an artist who doesn't happen to be a master printer artists tend to want to experiment. And this helps them help artists when maybe this problem comes into the studio and they have to solve it with them. Artists don't work in a vacuum. So it's printers who are also artists like Segura and many printers like him who place their value on collaboration front and center in their process. They build trust with artists in the studio, but also collaboration is an infinitely personal experience, and an artist and a printer may get on very badly during the experience. I've seen it, I've experienced it, but also it's temporary, right? For the first 2 days of the residency, you might not get along. You might actually butt heads, or your personalities are different. But then you have this personality clash, maybe it's a technical or aesthetic crisis, and then you push through. And at the end, you're so glad that that person challenged you and pushed you. So this is what happens in the studio that often doesn't really get to art history, doesn't get to the finished product of the print itself that's produced. I brought in a graphic just to give you a sense of the types of printing that exist. This is very nerdy of me, I apologize. Today I'll be working or explaining a bit more about planographic, which is at the bottom left, which is lithography. And a lot of Chicano art history includes screen printing or stencil, which you can see right there on the right side. But there's also relief and intaglio, and they all have different processes and different demands of the artist and printer. So just to give you a really quick rundown of how a lithograph would be made, and I apologize if I'm saying things you already know. To start a print series, an artist would draw on a series of plates. These can be limestone slabs. They can also be aluminum plates. Lithography has several surfaces now, with a grease-based litho pencil, which is what you see Luis Jimenez using on the right of the slide there, and a different plate for each color to appear in the finished print. So every time you have a new color in your print, that's an entirely new plate or surface that you have to prepare. Each plate is processed with gum arabic and acid and printed by sponging with water and rolling with ink. This is where the printer would step in and do that chemical process for you once you finish your sketch as an artist. The greasy pencil attracts ink. This is a very technical part, so pardon me while I read exactly what I wrote. The water repels the oil-based ink from the rest of the print, and this is the step where the printer sets the drawing so that it can be printed. So through a bit of chemistry, the acid interacts with the limestone surface, and the oils in the drawing produce fatty acid salts. These salts bind to the stone surface, and they're what holds the ink during printing. So in short, it creates a chemical impression of the artist's drawing, and it stays there even after the drawing is rinsed off. It's really easy to screw up this step. You use too much acid or leave it on too long and the image will print too light. You use too little and the image will print too dark. So a master printer understands having to sort of have a chemistry set, and mixing the ratios of the acid just right so that the composition looks great as a print later on. To complicate it, most fine art prints require multiple steps of this, and each part of a composition requires a different concentration of acid. A bad etch, which is what we call this step, can destroy a work and force the artist to start over. And I've been there, it is demoralizing. So in summary, every print takes creative, exacting work on the part of the printmaker and the artist to make sure that each one is identical so that all prints in each series or edition are considered originals and part of the series. I love this picture. Mars recognized the importance of giving artists access to this process, and between the year 1985 and 2000, prominent Chicano artists came to Phoenix to participate in an artist in residence program that Amalia talked about. It was a one-week residency, which included a solo exhibition at the Mars Art Space downtown, and it also included working with one of two master printers, John Armstrong and Joe Segura. And from this collaboration, a limited edition 5-color print was produced and made available for sale to benefit Mars. And yes, that means that to get a 5-color print like this, the chemical process I just described had to be done at least 5 times perfectly. So the print that you saw in the image before is this one. This is the Rose Tattoo by Luis Jimenez. It is no mystery that when I look at a print like this one, I have a deep appreciation for the labor and skill that go into printing. A successful chemical process in litho leaves no trace. The traditional goal of the printer is to create an exact reproduction of the artist's original design and without any visible signs of manipulation or variation. So in this sense, the printer strives to be invisible. But when I look at this, Segura's skill is far from invisible. I see the bright yellow layer underneath with vibrant blue on top, bringing the card to life. The layering of both yellow and blue gives the man's shirt and jeans a dimensional green hue. Here, Jimenez's signature cross-hatching gives the print a loose, dreamy quality that feels like he just drew this in 5 minutes, perhaps. While we now know that the process of making it was disciplined and methodical and nothing but loose. Jimenez and Segura would go on to work together again. You'll find this a lot in art history, is that when printers and artists get along well and work together well one time, keeps happening. Born in an immigrant family in El Paso, Texas in 1940, Jimenez really placed the Southwest at the center of his life and art. So cowboys, cacti, and rattlesnakes were constant motifs in his work. And here, a subtle layer of blue at the bottom of the snake, visible there, makes the yellow tones of the coiled serpent more vibrant and menacing because it's opposite on the color wheel. Another artist that I've heard several times today, and I'm so happy he's present in this way, is Rupert Garcia. He participated in Mars's Artist in Residence program, and he's one of the leading artists in Chicano art in the Chicano art movement of the San Francisco Bay Area in the 1960s and 70s, and he's well known for his graphic screen prints that comment on race, politics, and the Vietnam War. Garcia composed his political posters of large blocks of bright color that function on both figurative and abstract levels, and he eventually found silkscreen or screen print to be too mechanical, and he switched to using pastels in lithographic prints in 1975. So when he went on to Mars, he was already in that place where he wanted to experiment more with pastel and lithograph. And the work on the right, which I think Amaya showed in her keynote, is called Hoodwinked from 2017, and this was a really intimate work where this is a self-portrait of Rupert from his time in Vietnam, and the cover on his eyes is actually the ribbon he received for his service in the Vietnam War, and this experience deeply affected him, and he went on to, join the anti-Vietnam War movement in Berkeley. So lots of interesting connections between his own service and also his political art making. In this print, Goliath over David, or the US invasion of Granada, made in 1987 with Joe Segura, he exemplifies one of these later lithographs in his pursuit of political truth through his work. As the piece title suggests, Garcia casts the United States as a strong Goliath and the small island nation of Granada as David. But in this case, however, David does not prevail, and in this previous rendering of the biblical story, the US obtained victory in Granada after a few weeks. And with this analogy, like Rupert does so well, he challenges the validity of and morality of the power that the giant US asserted in this conflict. He demonstrates American power visually in this lithograph with a machine, the looming figure of a helicopter. This print was a detail taken from a larger painting of the same name and highlighted the experimental and playful potential of print. So an artist can come with an image already made, and then it changes through the process of lithography or printmaking. This is really allowing us to really zone in on a larger image that he had brought in. I hope my remarks today have been both useful and revealed that when it comes to the work of printers, it takes an extraordinary amount of skill to be invisible. Every lithograph poses a unique challenge that requires the printer's accumulated experience, intuition, and judgment. Viewing prints in a gallery, I think it's easy to miss the hidden steps involved in realizing an artist's vision. But with firsthand experience, hidden worlds of creativity and skill emerge for you to see. This is the alchemy that I hope became more visible for us all by highlighting the role of the printer and the relationship between artist and printer. I am very close with my printer, and I consider him a close friend because he's seen me at my worst, and he has never let me give up. Collaboration is not just a crucial part of printmaking, it is a key component of Chicanx aesthetic production. It was happening at the height of the 60s all over the country, and it has deep, deep roots here in Arizona. Thanks for the foresight of the Movimiento Artístico de Rio Salado. Thank you, everyone.
Buenos. My name is Martin Moreno. I'm a visual artist. Before I get started here, a couple of things I'd like to do. Number one is I would like to have all the old Martians stand up, right? Stand up one time. And if you would, say your name out real loud for everybody to understand that you are one of these artists that played such an important part in this movimiento, please. So if we start here, your name loud, say your name loud, please. Joe. That's my next request. We've lost many artists, and the custom that we have, the tradition that we have, is to mention those individuals that have lost, that have gone to the other world, and after we say their name, we say presente. So Ralph Cordova. Marta de Leon. Luis Jimenez. Albert Soto. Luis Bernal. Manuel Acuña. If you have a name that you'd like to mention, please do so. Presente. 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 Ray Padilla. Matthew, come over here and help me get this. You see, I'm old school, right? There I am. ¿Cuál plano? All right.
Is that easy enough?
Yeah, it's easy.
So you can see that forward?
Yeah. To understand Chicano art, you need to understand the history of art, the history of Chicano movement. My history started in Michigan. We refer to it as Michigan sometimes because it was very lonely there sometimes. My parents were migrant workers and factory workers. My mother instilled in me the belief that I could create anything if I could see it in my mind's eye, right? And I believed her. I still believe her. She was brought to this country when she was in the 3rd grade, right? She didn't speak English. She never spoke English. She feared deportation. She was one of many, thousands and thousands of people that were brought to this country by their parents to make a better life for themselves. We live in a time that our existence here as human beings is threatened, and art today is more important than ever. It's always been my philosophy that the artist has a right to point the finger at injustice, but more than the right, the responsibility to do so. I applaud the museum, Phoenix Museum of Art, for their dedication to truth. I thank Christian and Matthew for their support. This is one of 3 major pieces I did in Michigan before I moved to Arizona. Pictured here is a young Moreno, right? You can't see it too well, but on my arm I have this patch that says Chicano Power. You see, the movimiento did not start in the Southwest. It did not start in Texas or Califas. It started all over the country at just about the same time. When we were becoming aware of the injustices, when we were being given a voice through the words of the poets, through the Teatro Campesino, through the visual artists, Asco Fiasco, right? This movimiento was nationwide. In Michigan, there was Raza Arte. Dr. George Vargas was the founder. Nora Chapa Mendoza was a member, prestigious woman. She received honors actually this year for being Artist of the Year in Michigan. She is 90 years old, and she received an award of $100,000. Long overdue. Pictured here are some of my crew in Adrian, Michigan, where I was born and raised. Walter Burrow, Hector Perez, and not pictured is another friend of mine, Brad Blake. As an artist, I treasure collaboration. It is essential. It is essential for a successful project. And as a muralist, I pride myself on the fact that many of my works are still up. Time, especially here in Phoenix, erodes the work, but I'm proud to say that I still have some here that's present and also in Michigan. I am a union man. I believe in the power of unity, of people, the power of the masses, and we need to harness that power now. I was raised and taught by priests and nuns, so that Catholic Christian stuff is stuck in my head and it comes out all the time in my artwork, right? Like it or not, right? It's there. I've also studied the masters of Mexico, Siqueiros, Orozco, Rivera, the muralistas, right? Rivera created a piece at the Detroit Institute of Art, probably one of his most famous pieces that gave tribute to the Industrial Revolution. So I practice a lot of the philosophies of Siqueiros, especially. He indicated that the artist could guide the viewer, right? So this piece is one of the first major pieces that I did in Michigan. This is a very non-threatening image done on a one-way street, on a building. So this is the only thing that you see when you're cruising down this street and you see this beautiful flower, non-threatening, so you have to get off your car and see the rest of the work, and this is what you see. This is a reference to my migrant background, right? While we were doing this piece, Martin Luther King's auntie came up to us and came up to me and says, "Oh my goodness, that's my Lord." And she saw this hidden symbolism that I had painted in the piece, the crucifixion. But also above that, this was after the anti-war movement, right? So this also reflects the gesture of the the military, the infantry, right, when they're carrying their weapons through the rice paddies. When I was young, the only thing available to me as a young man was the fields and the factories. There was no other choice. Role models were few and far between. The campesino, right? We were the first environmentalists because we worked the land. We knew of the pesticides that would harm us. We were aware of the hazards and the dangers of low pay, right? And the dangers that were before us if we entered the industrial stream, right? This is death. This is what's coming out of this pipeline is molten flesh. It's being molded into these forms which are human bodies. This is a depiction of how we dehumanize people. We dehumanize the labor force so that they are things. If you are a thing, you're easily manipulated and used and abused. This leads you into the road not taken, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, the symbol of sky and earth, the universe, education. Talak, the god of rain and thunder. So when you become aware of who you are and the richness that you have, you can take on this road and travel this road to the future. I mentioned Dr. George Vargas. Before he was a doctor, he was an artist, right? Before he was an art historian, he was an artist from my hometown in Adrian. We collaborated on this piece. This is The Spirit of Detroit. Dr. Vargas wrote a book called Contemporary Chicano Art, where he highlighted the works of Midwestern Chicano artists. This is painted by the Ambassador Bridge that takes you into Canada. Once again, Chacmol and the feathered serpent appear. And the workforce in the skies, symbolic of the workers that built Detroit. This is not a self-portrait. This is the symbol here is that knowledge and power comes from a higher power. We don't know what that is, right? And what this figure holds in his hand is the sunstone, the ancient calendar, the Aztec calendar. This is a 3-story piece. This is in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And it still stands. It still stands pretty strong. There's some damage, and we're working on repairing the piece as we speak. There's people working towards that. My community, my neighborhood, was a neighborhood called Sunnyside. Sunnyside was like many other neighborhoods. There are Sunnysides here in Arizona. There's a Hollywood here in California. There was a Hollywood in Michigan, right? In my hometown. These neighborhoods were usually in industrial complexes, and pollutants and carcinogens were distributed accidentally or carelessly, whatever. But this is a portrait of my neighborhood, the inner city, and the pollution that plagued our neighborhood when we were growing up. To the far right is Siqueiros, Orozco, and Rivera. We talk about iconography, and one of those things that I always deal with is the reference to familia, the reference to the land, the reference to workers of the land. So this is a sculptural piece that is at the center of the mural. These giant Olmec sculptures that appear to be in metal are very ominous, almost floating above this altar. In the 80s, I moved to Arizona, where I began to work with students here. In 2011, I was selected as Artist of the Year for the state, the Governor's Award. I was very honored to receive that. But during that time, I also led a campaign to create public art. This piece was created at South Mountain High School. This is where my son and my daughter-in-law attended school. This is also a collaboration where I utilize the talents of South Mountain High School students, but also the talents of my son, Reggie Casillas, and Armando Williams, and Gabriela Munoz were among my crew there, right? Gabriela has been shown here as award-winning artist that is a force to be reckoned with. When I was in Michigan, I taught and I worked with the inmates of Jackson State Prison. Jackson State Prison was the largest federal prison in the country at one point in time. And some of the vatos that I worked there with had these tattoos, right? The bleeding rose. And when I asked them what that represented was in Spanish in their Cholo language, it says, ¿sabes qué? Que la vida es muy bella, y that life is beautiful, but yet very painful. These were hardcore cats that were doing life, who had changed their lives around, were now utilizing art. And the poetry that came from their words and their thoughts have stuck with me forever. So I use this a lot in my work, the bleeding rose, symbolic of the fact that life is beautiful yet sometimes painful. This is a tribute to the neighborhoods that were affected by the expansion of the Phoenix Airport. Some of these neighborhoods no longer exist. The piece is called Familia, once again, el corazón de la comunidad, the heart of the community. This depicts the life of a young woman and the stages of her life. This is another piece I did at Sagrado Gallery. This was done also with the help of my son, Reggie Casillas and Gloria Casillas. Gloria is also a force to be reckoned with here. She's shown here at the Phoenix Museum and is being shown nationally. Very proud of her. This is the hummingbird. This is the Aztec god of war, Huitzilopochtli. But she's also the Guadalupe. The Guadalupe is utilized a great deal in Chicano art, not because of the spiritual things that she represents, but also the fact that she's the symbol of taking the fallen warrior to the next world, right? So, and once again, the bleeding rose surrounds the image. Rasa Development Fund. I give tribute a great deal to our indigenous brothers and sisters, right? The fact that they were here before we were, right? The fact that they developed the irrigation systems that exist in our in this city that we still use. It's a forgotten history that needs to be recognized and remembered. I try to do that whenever I can. Once again, the Guadalupe with the bleeding rose in hand. This was painted under the direction of Dr. Ray Padilla at the Hispanic Research Center at the university. This is only a part of the stairwell mural that I created there. Amalia mentioned the fact that in 1992, we celebrated the fact that Native Americans discovered Columbus. So this is a tribute. This is called My Brother's Spirit, and it talks about my background, my beliefs, the Guadalupe, the Thunderbird, the United Farm Workers symbol, the aloe plant, which is a plant of healing, and the introduction of the horse, to our hemisphere here, brought by the Spanish. There's a piece called Malinche. Malinche was our mother. To some, she was a traitor because she served as an interpreter for Cortés. This piece was done at Cesar Chavez Park, and it's one of 4 relief pieces that were created at Cesar Chavez Park on 35th Avenue in South Phoenix. Another partner that worked on this is Zarco Guerrero. I don't know if Zarco is here, but another force in Arizona, in the nation actually. And Dalinda Jimenez was the architect that created the landscape for the park. This once again talks about the pesticides that were sprayed on vegetation while the workers were still in the fields, which proved to be carcinogen to many people. The politics of art. I don't mean to offend, but this piece is entitled Your New Nigger, Your New Faggot. This piece was done during the SB 1070 controversy here, where 250,000 people marched in the street and changed the direction of this state. This was featured in San Francisco, the New Times there, prior to the vote on SB 1070, where it was defeated. This is also a piece that we it's a banner that we fly periodically at the protests, right? Once again, pretty self-explanatory. Art and politics are inseparable. Like I said before, we as artists have that responsibility to point a finger. We need to do so, probably with more force and with more ganas than ever before. This is where that Christian stuff comes up, right? Over and over, and the forbidden fruit. This was part of the exhibition that Dr. Tomas Frausto created, Rascuachismo, right? This is part of their traveling exhibition. With that, wish to thank you. Gracias.
All right. So we're gonna take a little pivot from the sketch and just go to lunch, and we can Q&A it up over some food. But we have El Fongo de Joy has done the catering today, so go out and grab a burrito, a bag of chips, some drink, and then we'll reconvene in here at 1:30. Cool. Thanks, everyone.